my campus. I have a right to be here. I felt like we've been invaded.
If you lived here in Kent for 40 years, you wish the college had never been here.
There are those, honestly, that do hate students or hate young people.
They want to run our country. How can they run our country when they can't even obey rules?
Today, Kent State University in Ohio is quiet and unassuming. Yet 30 years ago, this campus became a battlefield where America would stage a 4-day war with its youth. In 1970, America was changing, whether it wanted to or not. The turbulent 60s had given rise to a new generation who saw the importance of scrutinizing its leaders and established politics. Across the nation, college campuses became fertile ground for new political ideas and renewed awareness. Students of Kent State University embraced the new outlook with excitement. Among them were Alan Canfora and freshman Laura Davis.
My experience of Kent at that time was very special. There just seemed to be something in the air.
I was going through this evolution, and like many people, especially from my generation, we started to really reevaluate America and what was going on around us.
April 30th, 1970. After being elected on a platform of peace with honor, which promised an end to the war in Vietnam, President Nixon shocks the nation by announcing the incursion of troops into Cambodia.
My fellow Americans, the time has come for action.
The reason that is important is that it announced two things. One, the war was spreading, but more importantly, we were continuing our involvement in the war.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue. And with a man's praise, hail to the chief. Ooh, they point the cannon at you. No, it ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no senator,
Unlike most Americans, however, student activists do not bear this news quietly. On campuses across America, the announcement is greeted with outrage. Among the angry students at Kent is freshman Joe Lewis.
I was opposed to the war in Vietnam, and I thought that the best thing to serve our soldiers there was to bring them home back to safety.
So we were immediately very upset by this and very angry. We were shouting at the television, we were cursing Nixon, and we knew that we were going to be taking some serious actions to stop that war and to stop the invasion of Cambodia.
Over 100 students gather at the Victory Bell on the Commons, a special meeting place on the Kent State campus. A series of protest speeches are made, and since President Nixon had declared war without the approval of Congress, they came up with a symbolic protest. Kent State student Barry Levine was there.
One of the speakers took a copy of the U.S. Constitution and said, you know, Nixon's killed it, why don't we give it a fair burial?
It would be the first of a series of student demonstrations to take place that weekend, and the only one that would end peacefully.
But then the word started to circulate around the campus that there was going to be a militant gathering in downtown Kent that evening.
That night, students filled the bars on Water Street in downtown Kent. an unidentified group proceeds to light a bonfire in the streets. Attracted by the spectacle, a crowd begins to grow, and soon anti-war sentiment takes center stage. Arriving on the scene at that time are Alan Canfora and his younger sister, Chick.
By the time we got there, there was already something happening. There were already students in the streets. There was a lot of chanting of anti-war slogans. Students started to spray paint some of the buildings in downtown Kent. I remember feeling, this is good.
Pretty soon, as a police car came by, one guy was standing near us. He took a bottle of beer that he was holding, and he threw it at the police car as it passed by.
Aggression takes over, and the crowd begins to smash storefront windows as they move down Water Street.
Mostly these were political targets, things like the gas company, the electric company, the phone company, establishment-type targets.
Some of the small business owners were getting hit, and I distinctly remember a lot of the protesters saying, no, don't get them, don't get that store, you know. Some people just saw it as a chance to just get rowdy and get crazy.
Members of a militant student group known as the Students for a Democratic Society, or SDS, are reported to be participating in the disturbances on Water Street. Kent Mayor Leroy Satrum declares a state of emergency and orders the bars on Water Street closed and has police clear the downtown area. Hostilities heighten as police force the crowd back towards the gates of the university.
They began to march and move the crowd around, and they fired some tear gas. And I think a total of 14 students were arrested that evening. So that was the end of the trouble that night on May 1st.
But Mayor Satrum is told that SDS students have taken over a portion of the KSU campus. Alarmed by this erroneous information, he contacts the office of Governor James A. Rhodes, looking for outside assistance.
James Rhodes had called out the National Guard so often, he called them out by far more than any other governor in any state in the whole United States. And the governor's office told the mayor that they would put the Guard on alert, put him on standby, that if there was any further trouble, the Guard would come to Kent.
Saturday. Concern grows among the downtown merchants, shocked by the sudden outburst of violence. Jim Myers, whose pharmacy was also damaged, recalls the mood that day.
I think it was anger. It was focused at the students who had caused it. And I think there was enough rumors floating around that, quote, students were going to come back and finish the job.
Sightings of out-of-state student militants entering Kent are also reported to the mayor's office, further fueling fears and paranoia. Under pressure from constituents and feeling his local police force ill-equipped to deal with the potential unrest, Satrum makes a request for National Guard assistance in Kent. Reserve Officer Training Corps, or ROTC, was a military science program present on university campuses across the country, including Kent State. Its presence had been a target of anti-war protest for years, and that evening it became a target again. That night, a demonstration of 300 students begins to march around the campus, slowly growing to a crowd of 2,000. As the sun sets and darkness envelops the campus, they descend upon the ROTC building and proceed to set it on fire.
At first, they threw some flares on the roof, traffic kind of safety flares, and rolled off and fell back onto the ground.
And so the students broke out the windows, they began to set some small fires on the curtains, and the building began to burn on one corner, just slightly.
I think the call came around 8:45, somewhere in that area. And so we headed for the ROTC building.
But then the students took the hoses from the firemen, jumped on the firemen, cut the hoses with some knives.
That was their mission, prevent us from doing our job, because they were making a statement with burning the building.
The firemen give up and leave the scene. Campus security arrives and disperses the crowd.
And as we left the area, we looked back and we saw that the fire was out.
The building just wasn't much damaged.
And we walked around the campus and eventually went back to the ROTC building area. And lo and behold, when we got back there, the building was fully involved in flames.
I heard the fire trucks coming in, and the second time, and I just turned around, and I'll never forget this picture. There were soldiers riding on the fire trucks.
Just as President Nixon invaded Cambodia with U.S. troops, the National Guard then invaded the Kent State campus.
As flames illuminate the Kent State campus, National Guard troops who have been mediating a volatile trucker strike are called in to escort the firefighters back to the campus. Among them are Kent State student Robert Bosser, Sergeant Rudy Morris, and Sergeant Larry Schaefer.
Not real sure. I think it was somewhere around 8 o'clock in the evening we got the call to go to Kent.
It was dark when we drove into Kent, and we were aware of the fact that there were demonstrations going on over there, and there was, if you will, civil unrest.
And I recall rounding the bend because they said there's some fires, and it looked like the whole damn city was aglow with an orange flame, and I thought they're burning the city down.
The guard stands watch as firefighters work to extinguish the blaze amidst the cheers of students. Guardsmen are then ordered to disperse the crowd.
It was dark, it was noisy. We didn't know exactly what all was going on, so we were simply trying to accomplish the goal of restoring a little bit of order that night.
Sunday, students examine the new landscape of their campus.
I'll never forget the feeling I had when I looked out my dormitory window onto the football field and I saw about 150 pup tents, jeeps, like little tanks going up and down the road and in and out of the stadium. There was a military takeover of our campus.
For Barry Levine and his companion, fellow student Allison Krause, the day provides a strange yet poignant encounter.
We were walking around the campus, and there was one particular guardsman that a number of students had gathered around and were talking to. And he happened to have a flower in his gun barrel. And as we watched the students talking to him, Alice and I also saw an officer standing not too far away, and he was not too happy about what was going on. You could see it in his face, and so he eventually approached the guardsman. He reached around Myers and grabbed the flower, took it out. And as he took it out, Allison grabbed it from him and said, "What's the matter with flowers? Flowers are better than bullets."
Unfortunately, the relaxed atmosphere would not last long.
Enter at that time Governor James A. Rhodes, who was involved in a U.S. primary fight for the Senate with one of Ohio's most famous political families, Taft. Governor Rhodes knew that the popular theme among Americans at that time was law and order.
We're seen here at the city of Kent, especially, probably the most vicious form of campus-oriented violence yet perpetrated by dissident groups. They make definite plans of burning, destroying, and throwing rocks at police and at the National Guard and the Highway Patrol. This is when we're going to use every part of the law enforcement agency of Ohio to drive them out of Kent. We are going to